there's some question around how big can it get, because big just means more content to chew on. But at what point do you run out of all quality human generated content? And if there's no more quality human generated content to train on, GPT-3 was trained on an estimated 10% of the internet, trained through it once. Well, we all read the internet. There's plenty of internet that we don't want intelligence to be trained on.
Yeah.
It's places to go to make you dumber.
Welcome back to SEOleverage.com. This is episode 96. My name is Gert, founder of SEO Leverage, and artificial intelligence is everywhere right now. We have been using this for a long time already, but obviously now this is a different game. ChatGPT has really managed to break through, I think, a lot of noise of the early tools, and now we feel like artificial intelligence tools come up every single day and can do more and more stuff of what we used to buy on Fiverr or hire an intern for. So it's really fun times. Specifically for SEO, it's interesting to leverage AI to a certain extent, as we might be hearing here for our content creation. I'm curious about where this conversation is going to go. I'm very happy to have an expert here in this field, Jonathan Gillham. Thank you so much for taking some time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to, have geeking out on this topic for months now. So happy to be chatting about it.
It's definitely a rabbit hole. So you're the founder of originality.ai, an AI detection and plagiarism detection tool. We're going to talk more about how this might work. I would just like to ask you to give a brief overview. Where do you come from? How can people understand why you have experience in this space?
My background is in web publishing, so I've been building websites for over a decade. Had a content marketing agency, had a couple of content marketing agencies that we sold, and so we were sort of very in tune, sort of building content for our own sites and strategy for our own sites, and then as well for our clients. And sort of had some pain associated with the plagiarism checkers of the day, with sort of Copyscape being the default, and wanted to build something that was more robust and useful for a team of sort of hundreds of writers and dozens of editors. And that was what originality was originally going to be. And then, we sort of saw the need as well for trying to help educate people on the source of their content creation. This was sort of pre-ChatGPT, but creating an AI detection tool to allow people to understand the true sort of nature, the true originality of their content, both being not copied and human generated.
And it's amazing. Copyscape definitely has been a tool we have been using for quite a while as well. Definitely the default go-to tool. But I do understand absolutely we have also come across tons of limitations, and I'm really curious if they are going to make this step to AI as well at some point. Probably they need to do. Before we jump into some real applications, if I read a text today on the internet, and this is a question I get from clients all the time these days, if they read a text on a web page, can they know if this was written by a human being?
Yeah, so I'd say so there's our tool, there's others. The short answer is, with a reasonable degree of certainty, yes. You can run it through an AI detector and get a 94% accurate answer on whether or not that was AI generated. It does have false positives, it does have false negatives, but with some degree of certainty, you can know that it's AI detection is not as sort of binary as plagiarism checking, where it's here's your 10 words that were copied, here's where the source was. That is simple. When it's like, hey, why did this article get tagged as AI? That becomes a little bit trickier to give a clear, direct, these were your 10 words as to why it occurred. So the short answer is yes. Long answer is it is a little bit more nuanced, and it's a probability question at some point.
Right. So it was interesting before when with ChatGPT really kicked in on social media with the first examples and what it can do and what you can do now much faster, etc. I had a lot of clients tell me it's probably copying stuff together from different websites. But as we understand now, it's really trying apparently to connect the concepts in a logical way, trying to understand to a certain extent how it makes sense. And you can just, if you play with it a little bit, you can copy and paste those texts into Google. You're not going to find them like this anywhere. So obviously it's definitely a different game. Where do you see today some use cases where AI content makes the most sense?
Yeah, so although we have sort of, what it says at this point, the leading AI detector on the market, I'm not against AI content. I use it on some of my sites. I'm not against it. I think there's a use case for it. I think there's certainly if it's only if it's ethically being used and being spot checked, because it can be a, world-class BSer in terms of getting a little bit, going a little bit hallucinating on some different ideas. So in terms of use cases, I think when there's a reasonably easy to spot check, formulaic, there's a specifically use case for content marketing is when it's sort of a reasonably formulaic set of content strategy that you're wanting to put out, that it can go deep on that topic and able to have a human that can easily value check. So for example, if there's sort of a standard question around what are, like, let's say, traits of a certain animal, that would be sort of formulaic enough, easy enough to spot check, and then able to have ChatGPT put some rich content around it. I think that's a solid use case. In terms of like complete creation of the majority of the content being completely created by ChatGPT. I think in terms of use case, it's an awesome research tool, awesome brief idea generator. It does so many things. So I think in terms of like full creation of content, that sort of a little bit more formulaic, easy to spot check, not mission critical, not your money, your life content is where it has the most applicability for full article creation.
It's really interesting. I think we started probably a year and a half with really baking AI into daily processes like content creation, idea generation, title generation, and all those kinds of things. We were very conservative at the beginning, but something we found was that really the research time went down considerably because we were touching on, as an SEO agency, obviously, I don't know, construction in Southern California, sustainable regulations and stuff like that. You need a writer to really be exposed to this for a few days, probably to start making sense of the different concepts. We're not industry experts. But then with an AI, as long as the prompt is specific enough, like you say, you really send it down a vertical where it can't really leave and has enough information to connect the dots and make it very, very specific, the results are astounding. And one of the main use cases I think we found, apart from title generation or ad text, this seems to be working really well, was really just outlining an article or a marketing strategy or like a book outline for XYZ, etc. Just to really generate those ideas. It seems to be really interesting.
Yeah, the topical in the world of SEO, right? Topical sitemaps and topical authority is a very hot topic right now, and I think it's that topical authority is a sort of cascading thing that flows all the way down to how's this article the sort of topical authority on this specific long tail phrase. And there's been tools for a while like the surfers, the market muses that sort of help guide to that. But I find the brief creation out of ChatGPT gives you a more structured approach to sort of getting that, completely covering that topic and achieving that sort of topical authority with a brief from ChatGPT than from some of the tools that we've used historically for that. And I think that's that sort of like, it's applying that it's applying a level of intelligence to it that we don't get from sort of the rote, here are the keywords that exist on other articles, puked onto a page.
Right, absolutely. What we found really funny, we played with this a little bit, was actually adding existing text from very experienced writers. So I would have my senior writer write a paragraph and then ask ChatGPT to rewrite it. And you would see how it extracts concepts, right? You could almost see the process, and then suddenly we have shorter sentences, we have easier structures, we don't have commas pretty much because they really, really go like directly for the relations, and XYZ is an ABC and stuff like that. So it's like very simple structure, and it's like, this is apparently the kind of text we should be writing, right? It's not only easy for the machine to understand, but it's also for a reader to read. So it seems like there's mostly upsides in this regard. We are very conservative as an SEO agency, so we always give like the advice to have really a human element, make sure the brand voice is there, that it's user friendly, there's some empathy noticeable, etc. So I guess the emotional element is hopefully the last one they're going to conquer. But it's really funny how this works. How does the detection actually work? Can you explain this somehow so non-tech experts would understand the process?
Yeah, so the way we built it was an OpenAI model that they make available. We trained it on a crap ton of output from GPT-3 and GPT 3.5, and then sort of trained it on both a human data set and a AI data set, and said, AI, our AI, so like originality.ai is AI, learn what this looks like and the differences from the sort of human verified human to verified AI. I'd say sort of the analogous of like, the question often comes up like, hey, why is this article AI? And, the answer is like, well, we don't like, because the AI says so, and we've tested the accuracy of it, but we can't say with certainty as to like, hey, these were the 10 words that triggered that. And I'd say sort of a similar analogy is like with sort of like trading firms where they have bots that are deciding on and executing trades. A human wouldn't necessarily be able to get in there and say like, okay, it's within our risk parameters, but I can't say exactly why that trade is the one that's getting triggered. And it's similar within sort of RAIs. We will get RAI has been trained, has been sort of verified to that level of accuracy, and has caught things within this. So one thing that's different about our tool compared to some of the GPT-2 detectors is previous detectors look at like, hey, what's the probability that the next word was the word that AI would have said to be? And it becomes a very sort of like linear probabilistic problem. Whereas our AI model will look at an entire article more holistically, or an entire set of text more holistically, and say, okay, because of these seemingly, or to a human eye, seemingly unrelated parts of the article, we've determined it to be AI.
Fascinating, really fascinating. So it seems like the more you train your model on more GPT-3 content, or then GPT-4, maybe the more precise it gets. Is this how this works?
Correct. Yeah, we trained it up to the point of seeing sort of diminishing returns on level of accuracy. But yeah, like will we need to feed it 100 times more data for GPT-4 when it comes out? I don't know. So we're gonna find out.
Absolutely. I guess with your background in content marketing, publishing, etc., I would really be interested in your opinion. What's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months with Google, with content interpretation? We can just guess at this point, right? I've got my opinion. I would really appreciate you sharing yours. Maybe in 6 and 12 months we're still in touch and either are surprised by the accuracy of our estimations, or really surprised by what Google is doing. What do you think? How are they going to react to content being a commodity, to everybody being able to create a website about cancer treatment and surgery and financial advice?
I think they have to respond. I think it's an existential threat. I think they've been very careful to say like, hey, their sort of sequence of information that they have shared, this they being Google, has said, hey, just a reminder, spam generated content is bad in whatever form it comes in. And then, by the way, we are capable of detecting AI content, and then coming out and saying like, just so we're clear, reminder of point number one, we have never said that AI content is bad. We've said that spam generated, no value added content is bad. And so I think what that means to me, and I think, so like, if you think about that and you think about like, what's Google trying to do, ultimately make money. And I do think they are facing, for the first time in a decade, an existential threat where I'm going to ChatGPT for some searches, as I think are others, where I would have historically gone to Google. And so that's going to start taking a bit of market share, not, probably meaningless at this point. But then the other problem that they're facing on the other side is that if their search results get absolutely flooded with AI generated content, will they need to apply some mechanism to try and keep their search results as a human generated? Like if everything that is, I think if you would ask anyone, right, like you're not talking to ChatGPT for this podcast, you're talking to a human. I think people want information from experts. They're okay with it being AI assisted information, but I think the focus on is going to become, so if I were to make like specific predictions, the focus on EEAT is going to become even more significant in 2023. I think they are going to continue to suppress AI generated content. I think that's going to have to happen for them. And I think they might launch their own version of ChatGPT if I were to go out on a limb. Those would be my kind of predictions over the next, because they have the biggest, in terms of number of parameters, they have the biggest NLP model in the world.
It's fascinating. I think it was surprising they wouldn't react any earlier or bring something out. Like it seemed like they wanted to pull the brakes on it for a while, because we have seen in SEO they have been working towards this for 10 years or
Right.
longer, where they just focused even more on the author and the EAT scheme, the EAT scheme now. It's so funny that it seems like links are going to be the only way to figure out if something is legit at some point. So they have been trying to get rid of links. Now the best thing you can do is get a link from an authority that's trusted to get your content verified and backed up essentially. It's really fascinating. So what we think here, or what I believe might be happening, is that it definitely just add this like into the search console, issue some warnings ahead. It seems like you heavily rely on AI content here or there, like they do with Core Web Vitals, where it's okay, they're not penalizing you just because your site is slow. They just start issuing some warnings here and there, say, okay, this is now a ranking factor. We look at this and what we think about this article and these kinds of things, maybe to counteract a little bit. But obviously there's still one main drawback I see from ChatGPT, and this is like the lack of source. But I mean, there are also still already solutions out there that start putting featured snippets together with the references where the information comes from, etc. So it's definitely something that can be solved. And once you can really trust this information because it's contrasted, I would believe Google needs to have an alternative solution. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of the sort of the applying the Google, like the web console, like the search vitals in a similar, the search experience score to similar to being like having a content score. But that makes
And
a lot of
it
sense.
would be following the normal structure as I believe it, right? There
Yeah,
was always like, now we have a mobile focus, we issue mobile warnings if you're not complying. We have a speed focus, we issue core web vitals warnings, right? We have a link
right,
spam algorithm, we issue manual penalties or warnings or stuff like that. So it seems like the
right.
next logical step would be starting there, even if it's not really intrusive and they say it's not a ranking factor, we just start detecting this, so we are behind this, etc., to maybe pull the brakes a little bit on too much badge
Yeah,
generation. But I agree, I believe they have to act. They have to act in the best interest of everybody. If you can't trust any information anymore, it's really, really tricky. And definitely
yeah,
competitors are embracing this like crazy. It's like just finally this advantage they could have timing wise,
right,
etc. And I think
right.
everybody loves Google. I guess so many people love Google, but I'm okay with a different tool as well, as long as it gets the
I mean,
result.
I was like with like what the moves that Microsoft is making. I'm like, in what, like, if you were to go back 20 years, in what world are we rooting for Microsoft as sort of the underdog in this sort of like fight with Google?
100%.
And it's like, wait, Microsoft's the underdog against Google? Like, go back 20 years, and that'd be a pretty funny statement. 30 years, yeah, well, 20 years, I guess, but
100%. I'm still waiting for the voice assistants, home assistants, to jump on this a little bit more. So it seems like they're taking too long. I would expect Alexa to already be able to give much better answers by this time. But they also apparently been waiting on where this is going to go. The one thing
yeah.
that's in the media, I'd love to see if you can speak to this is a little bit. In a few months, GPT-4 versus GPT-3. Can you give us an overview what's to be expected from GPT-4? It should be like the best thing ever compared to
Well, so
GPT-3. How good can it get?
Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, I mean, we've been tracking it closely because it's going to impact us
Mhm.
significantly. There's some sort of well popularly shared images showing the number of parameters compared to GPT-3.
Mhm.
And, he said that that's just total BS. No idea where that came from. They haven't shared that information. So if you were to look at the sort of the leap in size between GPT-2 to GPT-3 to then potentially where GPT-4 would go, will it be 100 to 1 larger in terms of number of parameters? There's some question around how big can it get, because big just means more content to chew on. But at
Mhm.
what point do you run out of all quality human generated content? And if there's no more quality human generated content to train on, GPT-3 was trained on an estimated 10% of the internet,
Mhm.
trained through it once. Well, we all read the internet. There's plenty of internet that we don't want intelligence to be trained on.
Yeah.
It's places to go to make you dumber. And so it can't train on 100 to 1 more if it's
Mhm.
already been trained on 10%. So, they've come out and said, like, there's a lot of people that are GPT-3 or ChatGPT is so exciting right now that there's people that are saying, like, hey, here's what the future will be. And basically, for all of the massive excitement around it, prepare to be disappointed. Now that might be him sort of under promising to over deliver. Could it be incredible? Like if you look at content that got created by GPT-2, it was garbage, right? This conversation would not be happening. It was clear crap. GPT-3 changed the game. ChatGPT put an intelligence around the structuring of that data that greatly outstripped the quality of just grammatically correct written words that came from GPT-3. So will it be more of that? And will it then be indistinguishable from human? I don't know. I don't think it will. I think any of the extreme expectations, it's not going to hit those. It's not going to hit the extreme expectations that people have of it. But I think it's going to be an improved level of performance on GPT-3, of course. And is it going to be on the same order of magnitude of improvement of going from GPT-2 to GPT-3? And if so, that's going to be a huge game changer. In terms of ability to detect it, GPT-2 detectors still work reasonably well on GPT-3 generated content. So that sort of has me a little bit confident that we'll be able to still detect it. But one of the graphs that, and it'll be hard to sort of communicate via audio, but one of the graphs that has me the most sort of thinking like, holy crap, this could be different, is if you look at like a curve showing like quality of content and the band that exists for we think of the best content as what the best human can generate, but that's not necessarily the case. Like it's in how good can it get is a little bit more unlimited than that. And so if we look at sort of a graph that says like monkey hitting keys, okay, now look at like kindergartner hitting keys and maybe saying hi mom, and then you get to like that band. There's that band of like what is human interpretable or human generatable quality of content is very, very narrow. There's a lot of crap below it of like, monkeys hitting keyboards, but then how high above that band of the best writer do we go for AI? And that's sort of like the prepare to be disappointed part, I think, because it's limited right now on training based on human generated content. And there's only so much of it, and there's only so much good stuff. And GPT-3 has already chewed up 10% of it. So that's I would say my take on GPT-4, my long-winded take on GPT-4.
That's very interesting. Yeah. That's very interesting. Yeah, I guess there's probably also, I mean, now they talk about starting to charge for AI. We've connected our own SEO platform to connecting it to OpenAI, obviously then charging for credits and charging for processing time. So I think people slowly are going to realize there is some value they need to compensate as well. And I would expect there's also some sort of diminishing return on a platform like OpenAI to actually do even more processing. How good can it actually get? And when we check out what Google very often seems to be doing is just really show, I mean, what is good content, right? What is good content apart from certain parameters you can check? But what is good content? It really depends on what those Google search users achieve right now. We've just had a really crappy page showing #1 for the height of the Eiffel Tower. They didn't touch this page for 20 years probably. It's still the best result because Google just knows this is exactly what the user is happy with, and they really don't care about anything else, which might open up the possibility for Google maybe to accept certain AI content if users are happy with it, or really ultimately let the user have a say with their signals and their behavior on what is actually deemed as good content here.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm excited for it.
Absolutely going to be interesting. Before we wrap this up, I would like to ask you to maybe briefly explain how your software works. So if I have a piece of content, if I get a piece of content from my writer, from my agency, from whoever, how can I use your software in order to get an idea if this was AI written or not, and what's going to be the output? What is it going to tell me?
Yeah, so it works if if your audience be familiar with like plagiarism checking tools. It works very similar to that. It's a combined plagiarism checker and AI detector, and so you can use either the copy and paste function that you'll be familiar with from plagiarism checking tools, or we also have an API. And so you put in your content, hit scan, and then we have two modules: the plagiarism checker and the AI detector. Both go and do their work, and then come back with a score identifying if it's suspected of being AI generated. And then in terms of how would people use that, it's really about sort of getting that sort of information disadvantage, information asymmetry between, like, you got a writer, you got an agency, and you got a client. And I think a lot of people are happy to be paying for human generated quality content, and also have to pay for AI generated content. But there's a difference in value, and sort of making sure that people are aware of what they're purchasing, whether that be an agency buying it from a writer, whether that being a web publisher buying it from a writer, or whether that being a web publisher but buying it from an agency. Sort of trying to drive that sort of knowledge of, is this human generated or not human generated, and then just paying sort of the fair price for the value, to not be sort of no one getting a disproportionate amount of knowledge. And like I said, I think there's a place for both, but everyone's better off knowing the true source of whether that content was created. So pasting the content, hit scan, and it gives you a result very similar to a plagiarism checker.
So this is like a probability. This is 80% likely to be AI content, or half of this is AI content, half is not, or how does this work?
Yeah, for probability. So it'll say 75% AI. So that's 75% confident that this content was AI generated. And then it won't yet. So we're adding in a feature to highlight what parts of the content, so what blocks of text would have had the highest individual scores, to help sort of identify, like, okay, this was probably the portion that we think was AI generated.
But that's what I was thinking about right now. If somebody takes an AI content, or has their individual paragraphs of their text created by AI to save some research, and other paragraphs are not AI created, this would then just factor in right now in the overall probability, I guess, right?
Correct. Yeah. And so, yeah, trying to be able to drive that down to the sort of block level. And then I think one of the, like, if it's 90% human, 10% AI, then that's, and we've got to do a little bit better communicating what those scores mean. But those scores really show, okay, this was, like, if it's 90% human, 10% AI, really, really good chance that was human generated, 90% chance, especially it's best if you can sort of look across a large sampling of content from the same writer to get a sense on if they're always hitting 75% AI, probably some edited AI content being used. If it's always like 90 human, with like one hitting 50% AI, like 50-50, where the tool's like, I don't know, but the rest of the time it's saying 90% confident this was human generated, pretty good chance that writer is not using AI to generate its content.
Awesome. Perfect. Very, very nice. This is originality.ai. We are going to link to this in the show notes and the written summary on seoleverage.com/podcast. We have episode 96 with Jonathan Gillham here. Thank you so much, Jonathan. You've given us a pretty good masterclass, I think, around AI content creation, detection, and stuff like that. So it's definitely spot on for what people are hearing all the time, reading about all the time. If somebody wants to get in touch with you to see how they can work with you, your tool, what's the best place to do this?
Yeah, best place is originality.ai. Yeah, they're sort of helping the team move the project along as fast as we possibly can. So yeah, any email at originality.ai will eventually get to me if it's requested, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time walking us through this. We're going to publish this soon to get this out timely, and everybody, I encourage you to check out originality.ai. I will definitely do so, run some tests on our own writers' work and see what the tool gives us. And we're all excited to seeing where AI is going to go. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Likewise. Yeah. Thank you. Always fun to talk on this topic.